Hello and welcome everybody. This is our July 2023 webinar series, Greening the Planet, and this is webinar 4, Your Future in Soil Regeneration and Ecology Restoration. So I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar, and before we get started, we'll let a lot of folks join. And we really like to see kind of where our audience is coming from. So if you could, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a chat button. If you could go ahead and just type in where you're coming from. Portland, Oregon, first one to register in. Way to go, Portland.
And then Germany came
right after that.
Bermuda, Texas.
Bahrain.
Yep.
There we go. We're all over the place. Costa Rica's representing.
Spreading knowledge across the world.
Exactly. It's always fun to watch just scroll across all the different people around the world joining our webinar. All right, well, we've got a lot of stuff to cover today. So let's go ahead and get going. Just talking about the July 2023 webinar series. We've had webinar 1, which is restoring our relationship with soil biology and ecosystems. And then we had webinar 2, what does ecosystem restoration look like? And then we had webinar 3, strategies for soil and land regeneration. And if you missed any of those presentations or those webinars, there will be links on our website so you can go back and rewatch them. I highly suggest. There's a lot of great content that was delivered in those webinars. And then we're in webinar 4 today. So with that being said, let's talk about some guidelines here. All of the attendees will be in the muted mode for the duration of the webinar. We get so many people that join, and we want to make sure we have really good audio quality for the panelists to be able to talk about the work that we're doing. And then if you have any questions for the panelists, so we're going to have a Q&A section at the end of today's webinar. Please go ahead and choose the Q&A button and put your question in there. Just a word of note, make sure that you don't put your questions in the chat window. That's more for general conversation with other attendees. And if you do put your question in there, more than likely it will get missed for the Q&A session with the panelists. So if you do have a question for the panelists, make sure that you do choose the Q&A button. And other than that, please enjoy. We've got a lot of really good content to cover today. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to be talking about in today's webinar. We'll do a quick introduction so that you can just get to know the panelists, and then we're going to get into some presentation. So Esmeralda and Ann are going to talk about the ERC, Rancho Cacachilas in Mexico, and then we have Chris Nash, who's also part of the ERC. It's going to be talking about some of the work that's been done in Pachamama and South Africa. Then we have Andie Marsh, who is one of our Soil Food Web Lab techs, and then myself, Brian Vagg. I will be your host, and I'll talk a little bit about my company, Sprouting Soil and Soil Matters. Then we have a quick video about our July offer, and then we'll have Q&A for roughly about 55 minutes. We expect that today's webinar will go about 2 hours in length. All right, so let's introduce our panelists. And I know John's first on the list, but he has a slide right after this where he's going to talk about himself and the work he's doing. So we're going to bypass John for just a second. So Esmeralda, go ahead and introduce yourself and just give us about 30 seconds about who you are and what you
do. Hi, everyone. My name is Esmeralda Ramirez. I manage the Regenerative Agriculture Program at Rancho Cacachilas within the food production team. And I'm from here. I'm from Baja, Mexico. And first of all, I want to say it's an honor to be here sharing conversation with such inspiring and proactive people like all of you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ann.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann McEnany. I'm part of the philanthropic branch of the Rancho Cacachilas umbrella, and I'm based in La Paz, Baja California Sur with Esme, but today I'm in Frankfort, Michigan.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Krish.
Hey, everybody. My name is Chris Nash, and I'm a regenerative designer, camp coordinator at Pachamama ZA in Naisna, South Africa, and also a teacher. Great to be with all of you today.
Thanks, Chris. Elaine.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elaine Ingham. I am the founder of the Soil Food Web School, as well as the Soil Food Web Incorporated. There we go. Incorporated does work from the research point of view, so we're always discovering new things. We're working with more and more people around the world. I think we've got just about everything covered at this point. But it's one person in the whole of Finland or Turkey or South Africa or whatever. So we need lots of more hands on deck to get this technology, this information about what it is the biology is doing. It's the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, the nematodes that make the difference between a soil that's healthy and dirt that will not provide your plant with what it needs to grow. So it's critical that you understand the biological aspects of what's going on in your soil.
Great, thanks, Elaine. Andie.
Howdy, I'm Andie, and I am a certified lab technician through the Soil Food Web School. I'm also a current CTP student, continuing my education with the school. I'm also a small business owner. My business is called Rhizos LLC, and that's where I provide lab services. I've been in business since about the fall of 2021, so I look forward to sharing more about my experience with that with you later.
Great, thanks, Andie. And then I'm Brian Vagg. I'll be your host today. I am a Soil Food Web consultant. I really have two consultancy businesses. I have one that my wife and I created called Sprouting Soil, and then another one called Soil Matters, where I've combined our consulting forces with another group, which Keisha and Casey, which you might be familiar with, they own Catalyst Bioamendments out of Nevada City. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to my section as well. Okay, so with that being said, John, without further ado, let's hear from you.
Okay, I'm John Liu, and I hope most of you have seen some of my work, but I'm the founder of the Ecosystem Restoration Camps and Communities movement, and I really hope that you'll all join as supporting members if you aren't already supporting members of this movement. We have grown over the years, so we're in the 6th year, and we're at almost 60 camps. So we're growing from 0 to about 60 now, and we could grow to hundreds and thousands if we have sufficient support for this. So we started by writing. I wrote an essay called Earth Restoration Peace Camps and published it in Permaculture magazine. And then about tens of thousands of people started responding to it. And then when that many people were interested, we said, well, how are we going to do this? And we said, well, why don't we all just share? And we asked everyone to share 10 euros per month or 120 euros per year. And when 1,000 people said that they would do this, then we started the first foundation and the first camp, and now it's growing. So the more you join, the more people who join, the more we're going to be able to support these camps around the world. So please go to the website and sign up. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Okay, and then I think we also wanted just to highlight the continued partnership between Dr. Elaine's Soil Food Web School and the Ecosystem Restoration Communities. I think this is just a great synergistic type of relationship. We're all in the good fight here to really try to restore our Earth's ecosystems and provide healthy living for all of us. All right, so I think Esmeralda and Ann, you guys are up next. Just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Brian. This is Ann McEnany again, and I'm a senior program officer at Alumbra Innovations Foundation. Esme and I are going to talk a little bit more about our background at the end of the presentation, and you can go to the next slide. We wanted to explain a little bit more about what Rancho Cacachilas is. It's actually part of a much larger business, nonprofit, and philanthropic enterprise that's working toward a world in which our community in Baja California Sur, the environment and landscape, and the economic generation of small producers around us, as well as our own enterprise, function and work toward an integrated system for well-being. And I just want to highlight that our values around risk tolerance, continuous learning, and the long-term commitment are why we wanted to join the ecosystem restorations communities. We see very parallel and aligned values with this enterprise. So thank you for inviting us today. Next slide.
Andy, the next slide come up for you? There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, so, well, Rancho Cacachilas is located in Mexico, in the Baja California Peninsula, at the very tip in the Cape region. So we have an arid landscape. We have an average of 200 to 250 millimeters of rain a year, which comes in the monsoon season. And this has been changing over time. We used to have the rain in June, and now we have it in August, even September. So rain has become more scarce. And because of the aridity of this landscape, we have a small human footprint in comparison with the area of the state. So we're close to 1 million inhabitants. So it's not a very dense state. Next, please. Yeah. So, well, in this slide, we can see the total area of the ranch. It's almost 16,000 hectares. You can see it in the yellow and green polygon. And what we are restoring right now, and we have fence on, it's almost 8,000 hectares. So it's a little bit more than the 50% of the total area. Next one, please.
And we did want to give you just a little bit of a sense of what we're trying to accomplish here. Our 30-year goal is actually to influence restoration on 55,000 hectares. Across the middle of the screen, you can see the highly eroded and overgrazed parts of the highlands that we hope to restore at the watershed scale. And you can see our ranch properties here, which Esme just explained. Next slide.
So these are some of our regeneration programs. So first of all, the ranch is a touristic operation. So that's like the main profitable part of the ranch. But our goal is just so the ranch becomes a ranch school, and that all of our regeneration projects serve the community as sustainable business units that can be replicated and that are sustainable with the environment and economically viable. So I'll tell you a little bit more about these programs. Next. All right. So we love this image because it's very clear to see the effect of the fence, and we can clearly see a lot more dense vegetation on the right side. And this picture was taken in 2020, so we can see how the effect starts to show really fast. And the reason why we need to fence to restore is because here in the area, normally ranchers have their cattle roaming free. So that means that when cattle roams free, they go to the places when there's better vegetation to the point that they can overgraze it, they can compact the soil, and then start a desertification process in the area. So if we could see into the soil of both sides of the fence, we will see in the right side a lot of more annual grasses, a lot of organic matter into the ground, and in comparison with the other side where we see more and more bare ground coming in as a consequence of the overgrazing. Next, please. Yeah, so the holistic management of the livestock is another way we try to regenerate the soil. And we started this program in 2014 with 42 Criollo cattle. And we work with this kind of cattle because they're genetically adapted to this region. The Spanish brought them 400 years ago, and they start here in the wild, resisting heat, aridity, and lack of forage during certain seasons of the year. So yeah, we started moving them with cowboys under holistic management, and then we go to electric fences, and now we work with big paddocks instead of small ones like the ones we usually see in some savory methodology. Next, please. And also, a year ago, we started with the holistic management of pigs. We did a genetic study on our pigs, and we found out that 87% of their genes were also Criollo. So we're working with this variety of pigs to preserve them and to process their meat. And the idea is to finalize them during the monsoon season when we have a lot of native wild plums, just to add value to their meat and process them into hams, prosciutto, style, chorizo, among others. Next one, please. All right, so the Regenerative Agriculture Program, our goal is to demonstrate context and whether appropriate examples of agroecology practices and land stewardship in general. This includes agroforestry, forage plantation, biointensive gardens, between others. And yeah, this project started 10 years ago, so it's one of the oldest in the ranch. I started 4 years ago working at the ranch, and I started as the beekeeper of the project, and then helping with project coordination, and now as a manager. And well, it's been a really exciting process for me to being here in the ranch. I have experience working at organic farms, but it was really cool for me to come back to my hometown, which is here in Baja, Mexico, and the challenge of an arid landscape to do agroecology. It's been fun. So I work with a staff of 15 people. Most of them are ranchers. They have their own ranches going on. They have a lot of experience. So we are lucky to have them. And of course, it's not always easy to be a young woman working in a male-dominating field, but it's been really cool just to trying to empower them by trusting their decisions, by having a lot of communication, and just to lead them into improving our practices together and have a really clear idea of our goals and our purpose as an operation. Next one, please. So these are some of our agroecology practices that you may be familiar with. We do a lot of polycultures, no tillage, crop rotation, summer cover crops, and a lot of other things. But of course, we need to adapt to the conditions we have on the field with the aridity of this landscape. So for example, one of the things we do is that we use lines of trees between of beds of crops. And this helps us as one, windbreakers. It helps a lot in the monsoon season. They also have to maximize the shade exposure and reduce the sun. And of course, we use drip irrigation system for the watering. We work a lot with all of the resources we have from the animals. So all of our compost comes from the manure. And also we've been producing our own seeds for the last 8 years. So we're really trying to adapt and domesticate our own seeds. We produce the 80% of our seeds. So yeah, there's many things we need to adapt to what we have at the ranch. Next one, please. So yeah, once again, our goal is to demonstrate what's possible, to make an example of what can we do with what we have here. So I like to work with a wide variety of produce and different activities. This includes beekeeping, goat cheese production, vegetable and fruits production, preserves, botanical products, poultry. So a lot of different things, working with what it's available by season. And all these translate in educational programs. So we produce, we sell, and we teach. That's our like the main things we do. And we're really focused right now on connecting more with the community to make a lot of collaboration with another non-profit organizations. And I think it's really important that the first person that we influence or convince to transition to more sustainable practices are our own staff, are the local people that work with us. And yeah, so we're really trying to connect with them. Next one, please. Okay, so I'll finish my part with a little bit of story time, and just to say, coming from a family of ranchers and farmers in arid landscape and a big passion for nature, environmental challenges and scarcity, water scarcity, it's been present from a young age. So the idea of getting hands-on agroecology and land management came after college, when I realized that our academic efforts weren't just enough to make a change. So I decided to take action and to go full on working on ranches and just focusing a lot on food security and self-sustainable communities. And this has changed my life in many ways, but now I realize that the skills this kind of work gives you are the most valuable and the most needed in a world facing crisis as we are now. And yeah, for me, it's all about food. It's our deepest connection with nature is that daily ritual we have with our food 3 times a day, maybe more, and what can be like the most healing part, or also the most toxic if we don't take care of it. So thank you. Next one.
And I'm a bit longer in my career path than Esmeralda. I've been working in Latin America for over 25 years, and I come from the private land conservation space. But over time, I've realized that conservation isn't enough, and we really need to spend a lot more effort on restoration. That many of the conserved lands that I worked so hard to protect still have many impacts, both human, industrial, commercial, and animal. And we really need to continue to focus on these special places and make sure that their ecosystem functionality is still there. I come from a place where the urban-rural boundary has been completely destroyed. Many of the small farms where I grew up in Virginia are no longer there. And I see the same thing happening in my place of Baja California Sur. So I'm really proud to be part of the Rancho Cacachilas team, part of the support team. I write, I make connections, I network, I spend my time working on bringing other nonprofits to see the work that we're doing and to help the farm team connect to others like this network to be able to just reach out and accelerate the progress that we're making. And of course, my work has gone mainly from the office to being outside, which is absolutely wonderful in my world. And I'm just encouraging anyone who wants to do this work to just take the skill set you have and put it to work here. I'm not a technician and I'm not a scientist, but I have a lot of passion, and even in my own backyard, putting some of these practices to work. that's it for us, I think.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Esmeralda. Fantastic presentation. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So I think we're going to be with Chris. Is that correct, Chris?
Fantastic, thank
All
you.
right, and I think you're going to take control, correct?
That's right. Okay, so my name is Christopher Nash. I'm from South Africa, and I'm going to be sharing a personal perspective on my journey in restoration, in agroecology, given that the title is Your Future in Soil Regeneration and Ecological Restoration. I'll just share my personal story and career pathway, which has really been one growing from the ground up. So I've titled my journey or story, The Pursuit of a Regenerative Culture, and we're asked to start then with a regenerative lifestyle. So I grew up in Johannesburg, the economic center of South Africa, the city of gold, in a country that has mined about 30% of all gold ever mined, and also is home to some of the most severe income inequality. I finished high school in 2008, did a few years of an engineering degree, and stopped in 2010 after my father's business went under due to the 2008 global financial crisis. And so I'm just bringing these contextual aspects that are beyond anybody's personal control into the picture of how that affected and directed my path. Yeah, I first heard about permaculture and was really interested in a practical application of systems thinking, working with nature, and to the ability to regenerate and co-create thriving environments that care for people, planet, and future, which really was inspirational at the time, working at a homeschool, a cottage school for children with dyslexia, and really looking at how the traditional education system hadn't served them and looking for more integrated educational methodologies. And so that sparked my interest. But in 2014, my biggest inspiration came into my life, and that was becoming a father myself. This really catalyzed some deep reflections and questions, like, what do I really value? What lifestyle do I really want to create and share with my family? And what is really important for future generations? What will the world look like that they inherit? And so we set off on a transformative journey and moved down to the Cape, and en route visited various projects, eco-villages, regenerative farms, and started drawing inspiration. We also attended our first permaculture design course and certificate, and had the privilege and honor to put that straight into practice, taking on a role as a farm manager on a boutique wine farm. Started making compost, growing food, growing medicine, propagating plants and trees, while also continuing my learning journey, taking online courses in systems thinking, social entrepreneurship, sustainable development, project management, and facilitation. In 2016, I founded Bioharmonic Permaculture with a purpose to design and prototype circular regenerative systems and spaces that support the holistic well-being of all beings for 7 generations. We established a demonstration site, a tree nursery, and gardens that produced food and medicine. We started hosting workshops and courses like Grow Your Own Food, Herbalism 101, and in 2017, hosted our first permaculture design course. We also traded at farmers markets, selling organic food, natural medicine, and other regenerative projects. The learning never stops. And I continue to research, experiment practically on the land, in the garden, in the nursery, and continued learning. Got more into deep ecology, got interested in Jungian psychology and inner restoration, and how inner healing and transformation is an integral part of restoring our systems and environments. Some skills like proposal writing and fundraising, as well as eco-village design. In 2019, I also started engaging with an emerging eco-village in Neisner called Pachamama Forest Retreat, which was a meditation and retreat center. And their vision was to seed a regenerative culture through the restoration of both inner and outer landscapes. Also at this time, a year earlier, the region had just gone through its 100-year fire event, burning more than 50,000 hectares. And I was really interested to see how the region would respond to disaster.
Brian, there's a red or an orange square in the middle of the screen.
Sorry, everybody. Yeah, I'm trying to troubleshoot a little bit in the background here. My apologies. Did that go away?
No, it did go away now. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Continue, Chris. Sorry.
And let's find my slide. So Pachamama Forest Retreat was situated right on the edge of Southern Africa's largest forest complex. It was a degraded piece of land covered in invasive vegetation, which really amplified the risk of wildfire, as was experienced in the region, and fragmented the forest edges. So this image is of a 1,000-old tree a few kilometers from the site. And I proposed a strategic partnership with Pachamama Project's nonprofit and Bioharmonic. The site had all the ingredients for the circular regenerative system that I dreamed of, including a sawmill, a tractor and wood chipper, tons of organic matter, and infrastructure to host people, such as cabins and a communal kitchen, meditation hall. There's a bit of a catch in that they didn't really have the cash flow to pay me for my services or expertise, although there was a strong alignment between the collective vision and my own values and vision. And so I decided to take a leap of faith, moved my tree nursery to the site, started writing funding proposals, started a volunteer program, started working on our demonstration site, and shortly secured our first batch of funding. And over 2020 to 2022, we cleared and processed about 2 hectares of dense, mature, invasive vegetation. I'm talking 20, 30-meter eucalyptus trees, processed all of that into timber, into firewood, into wood chip. So returned all of that biomass and organic matter into the system. We planted about 4,500 trees, about 4,300 of those being indigenous and endemic species. of about 25 different species, 200 fruits and nut trees of about 40 varieties. Our Living Learning Center hosted about more than 200 volunteers over the 3 years, hosted 2 permaculture courses with 35 graduates, and provided full-time employment to 2 staff members from our local community, as well as more than 10 part-time jobs for the local community. And in 2022, we partnered with ecosystem restoration camps. This is a map of the project. Some before and after images of our agroforestry initiatives. And this really established a mother stock on the land to propagate, to either scale regionally in both forest restoration of indigenous and endemic species, or agroforestry systems to provide for human needs and well-being. Some of the challenges, as I mentioned, the catch was initially the cash flow, and so some creative problem solving. I made a proposal to exchange my services for food, accommodation, and equity in the company that owns the land, which gave me access to membership in the Eco Village and rights to build a tiny house on site. I later took on an additional organizational role that offered a small stipend. The project also, the funding we received for the forest restoration was also only supplementary. And so the rest of the costs had to be generated through our ecotourism or educational programs. And because of these financial constraints, another challenge that we faced was an organizational dependency without being able to hire other professionals into the organization. The restoration really developed a dependence on my personal input. And so when I reflect on these challenges and the process, it brings up some really interesting questions, like how do we define success? What is real value, and what do you really value? And so speaking about this journey for me as a career path is maybe a bit misleading. And although I have not made large amounts of money, I really have been living the life of my dreams. I have taken the life path that is aligned with my inner values and my vision for my life and the world that I would like to see flourishing. The world I believe future generations need to flourish. And I've been living in an abundance in all 8 forms of capital. And I feel incredibly blessed and honored to have created this life experience for myself. So my life at the moment, in January of this year, I moved closer to Cape Town, choosing to prioritize the educational needs of my now 8-year-old son. I took on a teaching role and now teach a group of 10 high school students between the ages of 12 and 16. And I'm starting to integrate systems thinking and aspects of regenerative culture into their curriculum and learning process. I continue to offer freelance design and consultation and project development services through bioharmonic permaculture. Currently working on a curriculum and online course titled Regenerative Leadership, Catalyzing Systemic Change. And I continue to learn and study at the moment more on ecosystem-based adaptation and nature based solutions. Goals moving forward. In short, is to continue doing what I love, working with all 6 kingdoms of life, and hopefully establish long-term financial resilience in the process. I hope to move to get some more formally recognized qualifications. I'm really interested and passionate about taking the learning that these projects have offered and developing regionally scaled ecosystem restoration projects and building capacity for and eligibility for larger scale funding. And I'm also working on developing a fundraising campaign to rebuild the school building and establishing a regenerative leadership academy and youth development center. So in conclusion, a more beautiful world is possible. We are nature, we are Gaia, we are not separated. This whole living planet body is regenerating. By definition, it's what life does. Some advice is to listen deeply, observe carefully, and nurture symbiotic relationships with all life. It's as much an inner journey as an outer one, but don't get caught up in yourself. It's time to act. We all have a unique and significant role to play. Let's connect, collaborate, co-create conditions for all life to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Very well said. All right. And we go to Andie. Andie, take it away.
All right. All right, so yeah, I'm Andie. Just to remind you, I'm a certified lab technician. I did all of my training through the Soil Food Web, and I'm still an active student as well as a small business owner. The name of that business is Rizos LLC, and I'm based in Austin, Texas. So my agenda for the time that I get to talk today is just giving you a quick background on who I am, why I chose to continue my education through the Soil Food Web, how I started my business, and what my work looks like today. So I got hooked on soil biology around 2011 while attending Texas A&M University during an internship that I took at a vermicompost facility. So while a lot of my peers were going on to intern with environmental consulting firms and more corporate positions, I called up a vermicompost facility that I had seen at a farmer's market and asked if I could intern with them. And that is what got me so hooked on composting and gardening and growing food. So I knew from then that I wanted to work in soil health in some capacity, but as I graduated around 2013, it was really difficult to find a job that really kind of fit what I was looking for. So I just ended up finding jobs that interested me in cultivation and sustainability, which led me to working for a lot of interesting startup companies. Eventually, I landed at an Austin-based bioengineering firm that was a startup and has since been successfully acquired by some larger companies, where I kind of worked my way into an associate scientist position on a research team there. So I worked alongside other researchers with PhD and master's degrees, and they kind of taught me the ropes on how to design experiments and run them in a controlled environment like growth chambers. And at this time, I started also looking for a graduate program because I knew that I wanted to have a career more solidly in soil health. And here I was growing plants in these really sterile environments to support the controlled environment ag industry. So think like vertical farming, greenhouses, and that sort of thing. So I would go into work and grow these plants in a really sterile environment. And then in my free time, I was getting my hands dirty, gardening, going to mycology workshops, and reading any book I could get my hands on about the topic of soil ecology. So to kind of give you an idea of my timeline, while I was looking for a graduate program, what I realized is in my last position where I was employed on this research team, I had the opportunity to go to a lot of interesting conferences where I was among a lot of academics. And although I admired their work and found it really interesting, it started to make me realize that I didn't actually want a career in research. I wanted a career in applied science. So taking what people learn from these research initiatives and actually implementing them on a farm or in the context of ecological restoration and making a difference, kind of boots on the ground style. So I found during my search for a graduate program is when I actually stumbled upon the Soil Food Web School. And so I started the foundation courses in 2019, and I devoured those courses in about 4 months while I was still working full time. And then I started the CLP program. So that's where you work with a mentor to earn a certification in lab services. And that took much longer because I started that in 2020. And as we know, there were some unforeseen circumstances, but I kept at it, and I chose to take on a part-time job right around the time I was feeling pretty proficient in my microscope skills, but not yet quite ready to start a business. I just kind of had this 1 year gap where I left my full-time employment and I took on a part-time job while kind of getting case studies under my belt to inform what became my business plan. So then I launched my lab publicly in the fall of 2021. That basically looked like me creating a website. And one of my first leads came in through the Soil Food Web website. So the prospective client was searching for a lab technician to provide some biology assessments for their field that they managed. And then they went to the Soil Food Web website and searched there to see if there's anyone in their area. And presumably they probably clicked on a few different lab technicians, but ultimately we connected and hit it off. And that's been such a gift because it's resulted in this cascading effect of networking opportunities. Today, Rhizos mostly grows by word of mouth. And this year, 2023 will be my second full year in business. I'm on track to double my revenue from lab services compared to last year. So I'll get more into money talk here in a second. To paint a picture of how I spend my time, I am a creative at heart, so I spend a few hours a week on creative tasks. This primarily takes the form of writing on my Substack called Soil is Sexy. And entrepreneurship really has a lot of opportunities to scratch a creative itch, from maintaining a website, branding, creating resources for clients. I find that there's a lot of tasks that allow me to embrace my creative side. And then there's also this aspect of physical work where it's a less intellectual task, but I get to throw myself into making compost, actually restoring a soil system, and being on the microscope is a pretty physical task. You're just kind of in the moment with the microbes on the microscope. And then I occasionally get to do like a project work day in community with other people, which is always fun. Which brings me to the last kind of segment of my work, which is very interpersonal. I communicate with clients over the phone or video call. Occasionally I will do site visits or presentations for various organizations. My clients really run a gamut, so ranging from field farmers, turf managers, cannabis growers, compost makers, private landowners. But then there's this realm of ecological restoration and conservation that I find really interesting. So as one example of this, I've been fortunate enough to work with the Central Texas Mycology Society that got a project called Healthy Soils, Healthy Trees grant funded. And this is a community science project. They've also incorporated a lot of art related aspects into this project, which I think is really cool. And we've basically planted over 60 trees in this small local urban forest, and we're studying the impacts that various mulching and inoculation methods have. So this is a replicated field study where we get to involve the community. It's in the heart of Austin. So there's a lot of community activation and awareness and science communication happening with the public, which is really exciting. Okay, some real talk. As far as income, I don't have full-time work all the time, but my business is growing at a pace I can keep up with, which is really important to me. So I still have the ability to invest my time and money into continued education and other experiences that I'm trying to gain as I prepare myself for what's next in my career. But what's important to realize is that I don't actually do any marketing. So I am confident that I could build a book of business for a full-time income doing lab services alone, if that's what I really desired. It's just at this time, I'm comfortable with the living that I'm making, and I feel that I'm on track to be making the living that I want as a certified consultant. Balance, something that I do to care for myself is to build structure, organization, and self-discipline into my business. And this allows me to manage my workload within my desired work hours, leaving the room I need to take care of myself and my family. Satisfaction, I certainly feel value in this work, as you can imagine, and that is very satisfying. I've also learned that in life, you really have to nurture your mindset to make sure that you keep a healthy perspective on life and work, and you appreciate what you have. So I definitely have this next quote here is like, mental health is really important to me. I find it critical in being successful in business because it takes a great deal of intention. So this was a quote I'd heard from the writer Elizabeth Gilbert in an interview once. She said, "My mental health is a full-time job, everything else is a hobby." And I can relate to that. So as far as what's next, I'm still dreaming up the future of Rhizos and my career. There's certainly not enough biocomplete compost makers out there, so I feel really inspired by some of my peers that are coming out of the Soil Food Web program, pursuing those kinds of businesses. I'm also really inspired by the people who have shared today and the kind of work that they're doing. So all I know is that I want to continue working in applied science, working collaboratively with others, and be able to share about soil health in creative ways with others. Oh, let's see. I think it skipped to a different slide, but I basically just had one slide left that says thank you for being here. And the last couple things that I'll leave you with is that, I found this program really fit what I was looking for in terms of balance between intellectual tasks and physical tasks. I've also found that I had wanted to take detailed insights and turn them into practical actions. And I was also looking for credentials to bolster my career. And I feel like I've received, those are all reasons that I would again choose to go through the Soil Food Web School. And I'm grateful that it's here as a resource for us to continue learning together. Thank you.
Thank you, Andie. Okay, now on to my presentation. So I am Brian Vagg, and I own two companies. which is Sprouting Soil, which is the first company that I created and predominantly focused just on doing soil food web consulting. And then we combined forces with another couple, Keisha and Casey Ernst, who own Catalyst Bioamendments, and we created a company called Soil Matters, just so that we can have some larger breadth of clients that we can work with. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in my presentation. So a little bit about me as far as oh, sorry, I'll go back here, about how I came about doing this kind of work in the soil food web approach. My wife and I, we had a 5-acre homestead in Northern California, and we really, both of us grew up in a homestead environment, so we were very used to growing plants and raising animals and doing those kind of things. But my background really was a little bit more conventional in managing a homestead. My parents and grandparents, we rototilled the soil, we applied fertilizers, and we used different sides when certain things came up and so forth. So that was really kind of my experience and knowledge base I had growing up as a kid. When we started our homestead in California, we applied that same kind of approach. And I just noticed that every year I got reduction in production. More issues were cropping up. We are spending more money on trying to resolve those issues. And then I really had to start taking a hard look at the products that we were applying to, especially the food systems. I remember very visually looking at a set of pesticide that I was going to apply to take care of one of the issues I was having. And it was just heartbreaking to me that I was basically putting poison onto the land. And I just felt there's got to be a different way to do this. And for me, really, the entry into this was permaculture. I started learning about the design science and how to do companion planting. And, we really started that approach of removing those chemical products and those kind of destructive management practices from our homestead. And we saw results. We started to see a change. And I really want to understand the whys. I got the idea of, permaculture design science, but I still really want to know the mechanisms behind this. And I picked up a book called Teaming with Microbes from Jeff Lowenfels. And in that, Elaine writes the foreword. And I read the foreword, and I remember having this really impactful moment where I was like, wow, that connected so many dots for me. I've really felt like I had truly an awakening of knowledge. And so I looked up Elaine and was like, wow, okay, there's these videos. She's talking about the soil food web, and I needed to find out more. And so that's really where we went down this and said, I really want to educate myself in the role of soil biology and soil health. And so that's really how I came about the soil food web. And then, what inspired me to really take this farther was just seeing how this transformation on our property was happening, and that my now newfound knowledge was helping me understand why these things were happening. And so that's why I said I need to take some classes, and I really need to further this much farther. And really that kind of led me to the start of my own business. So, my background really is I worked in the high-tech industry for 20 plus years, and, very corporate culture and all that kind of stuff. And I was already by this point getting kind of burnt out on the whole corporate mindset and, the commoditization of the type of work that I was doing. And so, the running the homestead and making these changes with the soil food web approaches, I really it turned from a hobby to an obsession to, wow, can we really, make a business out of this? So my wife and I both decided, she was in the high-tech industry as well, and we both left our jobs in the high-tech industry to create Sprouting Soil. And it wasn't instantaneous. We went through the classes. I became a certified consultant, but I also worked part-time as I was making that transition. As far as my business part-time, still working full-time in the high-tech industry. But really, once I got some confidence about the work I could do and my skills and abilities, it became quickly evident we have an escape plan. And so at that point, we decided to stop working for the high-tech industry jobs, and we would dive fully into doing our work through Sprouting Soil. And really, one of the ways that I started to get clients and actually get my feet under me, why was going out and speaking to local grower groups and at different local conventions, just talking about the soil food web and the role of soil biology and good soil health and so forth. And I was really, really inspired there about the the connection that people were getting from my talks, that they were really starting to understand this. They themselves were like, wow, there's got to be a better way to do this. And we got clients that way as well. People that were really passionate about the education that I was imparting. And really my business grew kind of organically. It's great that I have my business listed on the Soil Food Web School, and I get plenty of referrals coming from that way. But I also now get a tremendous amount of referrals simply by word of mouth. And I think Andie was mentioning that as well, that once one farmer starts going down this road, other farmers get interested, and pretty soon it's like, oh, let me go contact this person. And that's really a lot of my business has been kind of in that word of mouth range. So where am I at today? So my wife and I have been running Sprouting Soil for about 5 years, and we've known Keisha and Casey Ernst, owners of Cacachilas biome. For some of you may already know them. They make fantastic compost. In fact, I have a lot of my clients that actually use their compost. But they're colleagues of ours from quite a bit of time. And we were all just kind of talking about it's hard to scale with some of these large scale projects. When you start talking about large scale ecosystem restoration projects or large scale agriculture, being kind of a very small consultancy organization, you get pulled in a lot of different directions when you have a lot of clients, and having some breadth of experience, with colleagues seemed to be the right fit for all of us. And so we created a company called Soil Matters, which has really allowed for us to start to tackle some much larger types of projects that may have been impossible for just myself and my wife to be able to tackle through Sprouting Soil. And then as part of this, as our work really started to grow, the homestead we had in California was really becoming tough to manage. And we had 40 some odd fruit trees, plus many different types of animals we're raising, lots of garden spaces. And so we figured it was time for us to move from our homestead, and we decided to move up to Oregon. And I feel really good in the fact that the people who bought our homestead in California have really internalized the work that we did there and have kept the homestead going in the same kind of vein that we had. So I feel blessed that this beautiful ecosystem that we had created is still maintaining and thriving. And then overall, also, I have to say that I do find the work that I'm doing really fulfilling. I like the work that I did in the high-tech industry, but after a while, that just whole corporate culture kind of aspect really was turning me off. And I find doing this kind of work to be even much more impactful. I feel like we are really making a difference in the world today. So it feels also good for me that I can still make a living doing the work that I love. All right, so as far as ecosystem restoration, I'm going to use a statement in here that may be controversial for some, but all the work that I do really is in some form or another in ecosystem restoration. We have clients that are for sure trying to take native landscapes and really degraded ecosystems and trying to reset them so that they are self-sustaining and resilient and so forth. But I also find the work I do in agriculture to be really in that same vein. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reset an ecosystem with those projects. And I know for some of my agricultural clients that it's not going to be fully sustainable and resilient, and it's not going to truly look like a natural ecosystem. But what I have to impart is that I really do see the changes in the ecosystem in small degrees. I'll use an example. I have an almond farmer, very conventional in the background. They're making the changes to switch to biological farming, but it's still a monocrop, really. I mean, we've introduced some cover cropping and tried to do some perennial growing, in the middles of where the trees are at, but in all intents and purposes, it's still a monoculture. but life is returning to that system. We had a spider mite outbreak in the trees, and my farmer asked me, what should we do? And I said, well, I'm curious to see if predator mites have started to move into the system, because we're no longer impacting that ecosystem so detrimentally, where predator mites would not have a chance to really survive any kind of context. And so my farmer took a risk, and we waited about 4 or 5 days, and sure enough, predator mites started coming into that system and started to address the spider mites. And that's little victories, there are little wins there, and it's like I can see that ecosystem really starting to reset itself. And really, when I look at this is, we need to do this kind of work because it really is essential to life. We've done so much harm to the natural ecosystems. And I know we need to still farm in a way to be able to produce food, but boy, we really need to change this so that we can sustain our life moving forward. And not just human life, but this is life for, the planet itself. And the other thing I would really, advise to folks, I know this is some advice that's already, came through, I think Chris mentioned this as well, which is take the time and observe the changes and really internalize the changes that you see. And sometimes this is a hard skill set for people to learn, is this observational aspect of it, because it happens so gradually, and you might be so involved in it that you may not see the larger picture. With a lot of the projects that I work on, and what I start to hear from some of my clients over time is they'll start to make comments like, wow, I'm seeing a lot more birds. I'm seeing more insects, but not, detrimental insects. I'm seeing amphibians, reptiles. It's this kind of reemergence of the land is occurring. And I'll talk a little bit about, when we moved up to Oregon, we now live in the city. It was a 1/5 of an acre parcel, but there was really nothing here. I mean, the landscaping was devoid. It was highly compacted, very denuded of life. And one of the things I noticed is that birds really never stayed on our property. They basically flew around our property. But now that we've started to make changes in planting, our plants and really trying to reset this ecosystem, we have birds in abundance. In fact, I see now many, many more birds on our property than we see on our neighbors' properties. And their properties have been well developed for some period of time. And we're really just at the minute changes that we've made. There's the fraction of the work has been done to reset the ecosystem for our plot of land here. So I really can't wait till I really start seeing a lot more amphibians come into place, and just a much, much healthier type of ecosystem. Okay, so what's in my future? Well, really, we want to expand our consultancy business. One of the things that my wife Shelby and Keisha and Casey talked about is that as we grow our business, we want to be able to train new consultants. There's a lot of school of hard knocks kind of stuff that we've gone through when we've created our companies, and there's a lot of knowledge to impart to new consultants. And so I'm hoping as we really start to take on some of these larger projects, we'll kind of get into this apprenticeship, journeymanship type of thing where we're helping training new consultants so they can go off and start their own businesses as well. And we are much more able to take on these large scale projects. And I like it in the sense that, between the 4 of us in our owner group, we all have different skill sets that really kind of contribute to the whole. Another thing that I really want to also focus in on too is developing the practices that really make it easy for our clients to transition from biology, from the traditional agrochemical world. And that's one of those things where, we've already started doing that development of practices, but I think there's going to be a way to even fine tune it even more so that we can help farmers make those transitions faster, easier, and so forth. And lastly, what I really like to do too is be part of the research that's shaping the industry. We're able to work on some projects where we can get some white papers written, that we can be part of that research that's really going to help drive our industry forward. And I think that's a really, really cool thing. Okay, well, that is it for me. And so I thank you for allowing me to talk about the work that we do and kind of where we're moving to in the future. All right, so at this point, we have concluded our presentations from our panelists. And before we get to the Q&A, what I'd like to do is go ahead and talk about our July promotion and do a short video so you can actually kind of see what's going on in the Soil Food Web School. And just to let you know that there is a significant discount, and the discount ends today, July 31st. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about, or watch a video about, the Soil Food Web School program.
When we're talking about the soil, we're talking about the base of everything.
Even our health depends on the health of the soil.
All the sickness and disease leads back to where you live, how you live, and what you eat.
People don't want to use the chemicals, but they don't have any other way.
It's not a desire problem, it's a knowledge problem.
Everyone needs to have some awareness of what our Earth is experiencing right now and how we can make a big change.
I find that this information hasn't been taught to me, and I had to get off my high horse. And even though I have a PhD, I feel like I'm totally undertrained.
I feel like I'm learning more with this program than I have with in-person classes in the past.
I've taken classes on microbiology before, but this course really makes a difference in the way that a story is put together that unveils the relationships between plants and all those beneficial organisms that we just cannot see without a microscope.
If you're looking for something that does a deep dive into soil biology, this is it. It is just an incredible knowledge base and is really relevant to what's going on right now in the world.
Without it, the only way I could have gained this knowledge would have been by dropping my life and going to graduate school. And that just wasn't realistic for me. But Soil Food Web has made it possible for me to build a meaningful career in land restoration.
I was really nervous. I was going to put quite a bit of money down and not get that bang for my buck. But once I actually got into the FC courses, I was incredibly impressed with how professional they are and actually the level of education you receive. This is the career path I've been looking for in the biological community, and I was having trouble finding.
Buen día.
Selam. Ciao.
Bula.
Wagwan.
Bonjour.
Merhaba. Gamerjoba.
Barefsiz.
Kia ora.
It's absolutely amazing to me that there's people with their same approach to life wanting to do better things all over the world. What the course is doing is actually getting those people together.
We don't have enough coverage. In terms of the connection to the network, I have found just an environment of camaraderie and cooperation.
They want you to succeed, and they bend over backwards to give you all of the resources to have you succeed.
At the Soil Food Web School, we train farming professionals and ordinary people who are passionate about the environment. Our students are able to help make a real change to the way that food is grown in their communities and to how the earth is being treated.
If you're looking for a way to make a big positive impact on the environment, the Ecosystem Restoration Bundle could be for you. Whether you're a farmer or agricultural professional looking for a way to transition to regenerative ag without harming profits, or someone looking for an impactful new career as a soil food web consultant, lab tech, or compost producer, or if you're someone who is really passionate about ecosystem restoration, this bundle has a lot to offer you. We've put together 4 really powerful tools that will help set you up for success, enabling you to make an impact on the soils and ecosystems in your part of the world. Tool number 1, the Soil Food Web Foundation courses, where you'll learn all about how soil functions on a biological level. Tool number 2, the Introduction to Ecosystem Restoration, where you'll study ecological principles and ecosystem restoration techniques. Tool number 3, the Certified Lab Tech program, an intensive 3-month program designed to help you master Dr. Elaine's microscopy technique. Tool number 4, the Introduction to Permaculture, teaching a regenerative design approach that can be applied to water management, growing systems, dwellings, and much more. Watch the bundle overview video for a more in-depth analysis of these fantastic course offerings. This July, with the Ecosystem Restoration Bundle, you can register for the Soil Food Web Foundation courses for just $3,800, saving $1,200, and you'll get these other 3 powerful tools absolutely free, saving a total of $3,800. That's an incredible savings of 50% off the total bundle value, which is $7,600. This will be the final time that the Ecosystem Restoration Bundle is being offered at the current rate of $3,800, and this cost will be adjusted upward. Financing options are now available, so you can pay at your own pace with a firm. We're putting these 4 amazing tools together because we really want to set our students up for success. Whether you're a farmer looking to transition to regenerative ag while having a positive impact on the wider ecosystem, a budding soil food web professional, or someone who wants to dedicate themselves to the cause of ecosystem restoration, these 4 tools combined will give you a great foundation. We hope you'll come join the soil revolution today and be part of the Soilution.
All right, thank you everybody for watching our promotional video. And now we're going to move into our Q&A section. So panelists, if you could go ahead and just be ready to take yourself off mute. And let's go ahead and take a look at the first question here. This question is from Max, and Max asks, I am a biology undergraduate student interested in the field of earth restoration and ecology. With all of the types of projects that exist, what would be a few graduate studies or other programs that would put me in a place to help or advance these types of projects and initiatives? Or how would be the best way to become a specialist? All right, panelists, who wants to take this one first?
I'm happy to chime in.
Sure, go for it, Andie.
All right, so yeah, I mentioned that I originally was looking towards a more formal, graduate study, and I think that that is a good way to go, especially if you're interested in working in research to fit as like the way that you are facilitating change in this area. But I also think that we live in this unique time where there are a lot of courses to gain the expertise and practices and network to be able to do this in a more alternative way than formal education. And so obviously that's the way that I've gone through the Soil Food Web. And we even heard from one of our panelists today who's designing a course. So I think there are ways to get the experience that you need in order to create change within the context of your region and what type of work you might be interested in.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, very well said. Anybody else, panelists, want to tackle this?
Well, I guess I would want to see anyone who's interested in how you improve or maximize, how do you increase yields, which are very important things, as well as the more esoteric things where you're feeling you're in stride with nature instead of trying to fight with nature all the time. And that's what current agriculture has gotten to be, is just how do we kill everything? And then we expect that to be good food for you and I to eat, or kids, or whatever else. So I'd encourage you really to come and take the Soil Food Web courses, because that's where we give you the overall complete picture. You understand what successional system you're in, and what does that mean to be in a successional space. So we go through all of those things, and then you're capable of changing your own biology in your own land, and having all your neighbors asking you, what are you doing? And you explain it, and you start getting an ever-growing circle of people around you that are learning what are the best management practices that bring those microorganisms back into the system, so that you don't have diseases, you don't have pests, you don't have problems with lack of nitrogen or any other nutrient in the system.
And Elaine, one thing that comes to mind too is, it feels to me like, especially in the United States, that the academic world is still kind of behind the game when it comes to understanding the role of soil biology and soil health. I think that's starting to change, and I think there are some schools that are much more forward-thinking than others. But it just doesn't feel like there's been a reset in academia yet that says, all right, soil biology, soil health, this is really we need to do, and really a lot of research funneled that way.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think that you have to go read some of the scientific papers. Go to the library, ask the librarian where are the journals that we are writing papers in, explaining what's the applied and theoretical soil ecology. There's quite a number of papers in the scientific literature that are present. You want to choose perhaps one that's a review of the recent publications, but then start paying attention to who are the professors doing the work that you want to do, because there's where you're going to get the perfect fit. You're not, just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that Rutgers has a good soils person, a soil biology person on faculty. You want to choose your master's degree professor, and then if you're up to it, on to your PhD in soil microbiology and soil ecology, whatever, whichever way you want to skew it, so that you're going to end up with the ability to do good research. And, are you going to go for an academic existence, or are you going to go for starting your own company and building something that is perfect for people to understand how and why we get higher yields and more nutrient concentrations and no diseases and no extraction or loss through erosion in your soils?
I might have something to say about this as well. I think as a young person, a graduate, undergraduate student, you need to think about what the future is going to be. And if we don't restore ecological function on a very large scale, then a lot of what we're seeing in the existing culture and economy is going to definitely change. So I think that what we haven't yet understood is that the value of ecological function, and that includes soil fertility and soil health as taught in the Soil Food Web School, it also includes the hydrological cycle and the role of biodiversity in creating, constantly filtering, and continuously renewing the oxygenated atmosphere. And if we don't do this, then there won't be an economy. So the new economy is going to have to be based on functional ecosystems. And when that is the case, then the people who are pioneers in this area are definitely going to be busy for the rest of their lives. And so, don't make your choices by what's existing now. Look through time into the future and imagine the world you want to live in. And I think the world I want to live in, and everybody I know wants to have clean soils and healthy, nutrient-dense foods and no toxicity and air quality and biodiversity and a functional life for our children and future generations. So think about that and see that in just a very short time, the large numbers of people are joining this. We can see and feel the kind of momentum of this. And so this is where the jobs will be, and they're in every country and everywhere. So prepare yourself for that future. That would be my advice.
Great advice, John. Okay, anybody else that want to add to this before we move to the next question? Okay. Thanks for the question, Max. All right, next question is from Ian. And Ian asks, I'm interested in utilizing eco-restoration and organic farming in aiding my itch to travel. What are some tips one could recommend for finding overseas eco-restoration projects and organic farming projects interested in volunteer help to allow me to travel? And what prerequisites would be necessary to find such opportunities? Okay,
well,
go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think that sounds like you need to go to ecosystem restoration camps and communities. And so I would think about what is your hope for yourself and where you want to go, and look at where these are. And so if you want to go to Africa, or you want to go into the small island states or coastal regions, or if you want to go into the mountains, there are now camps basically everywhere. So you could go to Peru in the high Andes, you could go to India, you could go to Philippines, you could go to Kenya, you could go to, I mean, I don't know how it's adventurous you are. You could go to Somalia, you could go to, we're getting new things happening with women's groups in Cameroon and other parts of Africa. So, there's plenty of opportunities, and they would love to have people come. And I think that's where you have a chance. So, prepare yourself so that you have something to contribute, and they'll teach you a lot, but you bring what your skills and knowledge to.
We work with people all over the world, and we have consultants in many places throughout the world. And so if you come and take the courses, the foundation courses, and set up communication, talk to all these people who live in those places that you would like to go. You want to spend some time in Denmark, you want to spend some time in South Africa. Your choices are a bit more limited, I suspect, than what John's talking about. But you would go to those ecological restoration systems with the knowledge that you have in order to help those people who are already present doing ecosystems restoration. So two very possible places to come and spread knowledge, and then you return home with a better understanding of what do we really have to look at. What if we don't have diseases or insect pests or weeds to worry about? What are the most important things in an ecosystem to make certain that we go in the right direction? We have the shortest period of time where your soil is still degrading, and how rapidly can we get that to not be losing its nutrients and the ability to grow better plants. So have some fun picking out those people that you would really like to work with, because I think that's probably a very good direction. Talk with us about who's out there doing work in the places that you want to go.
Yeah, I think, when you look at a lot of, groups, organizations that are trying to do this work, in their mission or vision statements really is around how can they train future generations of people to go out and learn from them, and then go out and establish those learnings elsewhere, to be able to kind of broaden that reach and broaden that approach. So when you're going around and looking at the different organizations, ask them about their mission or their vision, and see if that is a core component of what they're trying to do, is to educate the volunteers that come to their locations, so that then you can get the experience you need and then start your own type of work. Okay, anything else from panelists? Okay, let's move to the next question. This question's from Sarah, and the question is, I've seen what cattle can do to the land. I've worked in Costa Rica on an ecosystem regeneration project, but I would assume that if they are free roaming, there's actually less negative impact. Provided riparian sites are protected, of course, could you elaborate a little more on the difference between free roaming and managed grazing? And I'm wondering, Ann or Esmeralda or John, I mean, you guys have a lot of experience in this area. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I answered a little bit in the chat about free roaming being basically unfenced over large areas. And often it's not just cattle that are grazing, but also goats. And in our region, animals that pull up the root structure of plants can do some serious damage because things are very slow growing. And I'll let Esme take it from here.
Hi, yeah. Well, definitely here is a problem because of the aridity of our landscape. The native plants take a long time to establish in a place. So when cattle comes and eat everything, they don't allow for the plants to grow because they are always eating when they're small. So in that way, we can have like grown vegetation or adult trees in there, so the ground becomes more and more unprotected. So yeah, it's there's definitely a difference because here ranchers have like huge pieces of land. So if we don't manage the cattle in a certain way that we allow the ecosystem to recover, we end up with nothing, with bare ground.
Yeah.
Go, John.
If I could just mention that basically my research over the last few decades, starting with China's List Plateau, is to look at the historical impacts. And the historical impacts on the cradles of civilization show that following a path that reverses evolutionary succession leads to collapse. And collapse is collapse. I mean, collapse means that the hydrological cycle, the climate regulation, the weather impacts, the soil fertility, the productivity, it's all gone. And so, you know, free roaming of domesticated animals does not replace wild animals. It does something slightly different. I mean, if you're using holistic management, you're using your herd of domesticated animals to try to emulate, it's a kind of biomimicry, animals that were herding, that were moving in large herds, constantly moving to avoid predators. But we've removed the top predators. So this, you know, it's an artificial thing to move them around like that. And they don't completely replace the wilderness. And I think what you have to realize is that everything matters and everyone matters. So both for the systems and for human beings, we need to see that all this biodiversity is not accidental. It is the result of differentiation and speciation leading to infinite potential variety in genetics. And when you reverse that as a trend, you come up with a very, very different outcome. And so we need to understand biodiversity, biomass, and accumulated organic matter. Those are very basic principles of functional ecosystems and evolutionary succession. And when we just imagine that we can just say do whatever we want because we're human beings and we're in charge, then you know we're into something that we really don't know what the result of that's going to be after thousands of years. But we sort of do. And if we do it without knowledge, without consciousness, without generosity, without kindness, then we're pretty much going to destroy things.
Yeah, very well said. I think this is something that comes up a lot, at least in the work that I do, around this whole free roaming versus, managed. And you said it very well, John. That whole we've got a broken ecosystem. Predators are not part of this. Herbivores are not acting in the way that nature's evolved to kind of react with herbivores in that system. So I appreciate the work that like Alan Savory and others that are doing the holistic management to kind of do that biomimicry. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, you have to have something that's going to move those free roaming animals around so they don't spend the entire course of the hot summer days wallowing in mud and water and destroying the way the water cycle is supposed to work. So if you're going to have free roaming grazers, then you're going to have free roaming top predators. You can't have one without the other and maintain that ecosystem.
Right.
So go for it.
Yeah, a lot of farmers, it's just easier to manage than introduce a lot of predators into their flocks, right? So,
and it's like when you deal with Alan Savory's approach, the human beings have to act the role of the predators in the system. The people are moving the animals around so that they're not staying too long in any one place. Okay, well, that's hard work to take on that role and function of being top predator.
Right. Okay, panelists, anything else you guys want to add to this? All right, let's move to the next question. And this question is from Thekri, and the question is, I find the models of ERC and SFW fascinating. As a student of both, CTP student and ERD graduate, how do you find the management of global network that helps mobilize local communities and Earth systems to assist in the process of regreening the planet? What are the benefits/challenges and advice you have for others? Thanks.
I think the biggest problem is to wake up the majority of the people who are not paying any attention. It's like weather is weather. It's just going to happen. There's nothing we can do about it. And therefore we ignore it. Well, not really. Every year, climate change is getting worse. We've had the most horrific storms. We've had the worst weather, the highest temperatures ever recorded. And what is that doing to human beings? Are they paying any attention? And if we don't pay attention, what happens to Homo sapiens?
Yeah, I would totally agree with Elaine. In an extinction event, the top of the food chain is the most at risk. So look in the mirror, and then you're looking at the species that's most at risk at this time. And the fact that we're so much at risk and that we are really the problem also suggests the solution. We can become the solution if we act with consciousness and generosity. We've been acting with egotistically and with arrogance and greed, and we need to act with consciousness. I mean, basically ignorance and greed. We need to act with consciousness and generosity, and realize that nobody, food is not a commodity exactly. Food is a right. The idea that you have to, if somebody doesn't have any money, they should just die in the street. That's kind of sick. And, we need to understand what this means, that over historical time, we got far away from understanding. I mean, scientifically speaking, we're all one species. We're a family, and we wouldn't let our relatives just die in the street because they didn't have any money. And so that means that something really bad has taken place over time, and we need to identify that and remove it from the the society and the civilization that we've created. And that is a fundamental mistake, saying that things that we make, you know, like our phones or our computers or our cars or our houses or our infrastructure, our cities, our airplanes, and whatever, is more valuable than life systems. This is just fundamentally untrue. And so we have at the center of our economy a thing which is an impossibility. You can't infinitely grow based on finite resources. It is not possible. You can't have 8, 9, 10, 11 billion people who want to consume everything that exists, and have some, especially who have billions, and then billions of desperately poor people. That is a recipe for war, revolution, and collapse. And I don't think any of us want that. So we need to work to ensure that there's going to be peace and that there's going to be functional ecological systems in the future for our children, and not only for human beings, but for all life forms. So how do we do that? We have to realize that everyone has a role to play in ecological restoration, that has to be the central intention of human civilization going forward. So it's not just how do we get a job, it's how do we live meaningful lives that serve ourselves, our families, our communities, our countries, and humanity as a whole, and the earth. So, you know, we all have this role to play. We all are integral. And what I've seen over the time that I've been involved with this is that ordinary people are heroic and capable of extraordinary things. And that's what we really are seeing, that it's possible to rehabilitate large-scale damaged ecosystems. And that means that theoretically, we can restore all degraded lands on the earth. So this is our task. That's the great work of our time. We don't have to do anything else. Getting a huge bank account or another, you know, like driving a Lamborghini, nobody needs this. We need functional soils. We need a regulated, naturally regulated hydrological cycle. We need to be able to drink from the rivers. We need to have zero toxic substances. This is what we have to do. So this is where you learn how to do that. And this is where everybody, and we need mass collaboration. This can't be done with a company or one country or whatever. This has to be, humanity does this as a species on a planetary scale. And when we make that shift, that's the new epoch. That's what's coming. That's what we're doing. So let's get our mind around and have this shared intention, the shared understanding and shared intention of what we're doing. I'm starting to rant a little bit. At 70, you know, but understand this, and we all have to group together. So this is why I really hope you'll join the ecosystem restoration camps and communities movement as supporting members and share 10 euros or $10 per month. Because when everybody does this, then we're, you know, almost instantly, if we get 1 million or 2 million people who are supporting members, we'll be the largest restoration thing on the planet, because all the grant writing stuff siphons off to the you know, sort of swirling vortex of highly paid consultants, and doesn't actually go to the people on the ground doing the work. If we can have a horizontal, distributed, democratic system where camps all over the world can be supported, the people themselves can change the course of human civilization. That is what's at stake here, and that's what is possible. And so the more I dream about that, my head explodes. That's what we need. So let's go.
You know, John, talking about, you know, the change that we need to have in the way that, you know, our governments are run, culturally how we live, all those kind of things. It is frustrating to me as somebody, you know, trying to do this work, the artificial headwinds that are placed in front of me based upon the current systems that are there, both regulatory as well as economic and so forth. And it just feels like if we just made some of those significant changes in the way we govern, the way our economy works and so forth, that those headwinds would get removed and we can make this much, much faster. So I think educating is one of the key things we can do right now, so that there's a populace, a body of people that are demanding that these changes be put into place is a logical first step. You know, and then, you know, like myself, I try to fit within the current mechanisms that are there so that, you know, when my farmer says, hey, I need to still make profitability, you know, their mindset's simply on the economics of profit, that I have to help them in that space. So it's okay to still try to do that work now, but boy, there seems to be a lot more focus on changing our culture, our economics, our, you know, regulatory systems, so that we can actually do this work so much easier and faster. Sorry, that was my soapbox. Okay, anybody else want to add to this before we move on? Okay, let's talk about the next question. This question is from Richard, and the question is, how do you balance consulting for more revenue-driven projects such as regenerative agriculture transition and more socially and culturally driven ecosystem restoration projects? And well, I didn't mean this to be a segue from what I just said, but you know what I just said fits right into this. Yeah, as a consultant, I have a balance of projects that come my way. And you know, the regenerative agricultural projects tend to, I don't know if they tend to, but there is an aspect that they do pay more, or it's easier to make that, you know, the revenue, I guess, flow in that sense, because the farmers are in a profit-driven society or system, and they're using my services to help them in that space. But we're still doing ecosystem restoration projects and other projects that don't have a economic driver behind them. And that's typically done through nonprofits that have money to help us fund the work that we do, and grants that are there. It's just that those are hard sometimes to come by. I mean, if any of you have been into grant writing projects before, they can be extraordinarily time consuming, and you know, you may put a lot of hours into something that may never pay off. You may not get the grant. And so the barrier is tough to get into those projects. But once you do get the grants or the nonprofits that are helping you fund, then those ecosystem restoration projects can definitely flow pretty well. Anybody else want to add to this?
I'd just add that sometimes I do operate on a sliding scale, you know, depending on the projects and if I have the ability to. So I do think it's important that like our needs are met, right? And we're not coming to a project from an energetic space where we're feeling either taken advantage of or not able to provide for ourselves, but we're overextending our services. So with that in mind, like making sure that you're caring for yourself, but if there's ability to be flexible on a project that is more driven by nonprofit organization, I do try to accommodate that.
Yeah, well said.
I might just add one thing to this, that really, if you look at the value of ecological function, and you realize that if we were to change our economy away from materialism to an economy which is based on ecological function, this is a much larger economy. And this is an economy which could very, very easily be shared equitably to everyone, because it benefits everyone. So right now we have an economy which benefits a few, but disenfranchises or you know, disadvantages vast numbers of people. we have the opportunity in this understanding to create an economy which all human effort goes to improving things for human beings as well as all other living things and restoring ecological function. And that's where the growth is. We, like the political leaders are saying, well, we have to have growth. We have to have more production, but we're throwing away half of the industrial agricultural produce. So where's the growth? Why are we doing that? Because we want perfect green peppers and tomatoes with no spots or something. And this is nutty, because then there are people starving. It doesn't make any sense. So we all need to kind of sit down and have a collective conversation about what is truly valuable. And when we think and understand what is truly valuable and we base our economy on that, we have lots of room for growth in ecological function, and that is growth that has more productivity and more health and more time. Everything about it is good. So, right now we're driving fast toward hitting a wall. We need to put on the brakes, stop, and go in another direction. So let's think about all that collectively.
Yeah, it seems that human beings put the meaning of success is always in terms of the money that you have. How many of those, Italian cars are you driving around? We've just not thought things through well at all about how we rank people. Just because somebody has a lot of money, that makes them the best people on this planet? No, that makes them the worst. So let's turn our attitude around and let's promote those people who are doing things to help other people.
I had an economics professor tell me something that stuck with me all this time, which was that he described wealth as energy. And when wealth becomes hoarded, you're taking a lot of energy out of a system, and the system is going to entropy, right? And when you have wealth that's moving, equitably through a system, you have a much more powerful system that's running. And I think in today's world, this whole wealth inequality that we have kind of fits that statement very well, is that we are just pulling so much energy out of the system, and that's leading to a lot of problems that we have today. Okay, anything else you guys want to add to this before we move on to the next question? I think we got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay.
I have one more reference that I'd like to bring in is
Sure.
a really interesting study and body of work presented by Nate Hagens in the correlation between energy consumption and GDP, showing a 1-to-1 relationship between a country's gross domestic product and economic output and energy consumption. And some really interesting models, a PhD paper that the 3 models of energy supply and demand, and showed that, modeling down to expanding nuclear power, down to the institutional level of how many scientists and engineers are graduating, expanding solar and renewable energy, diminishing returns on fossil fuels. And currently we're running off about a 19 terawatt hour global civilization. And the best case scenario was in this modeling exercise that by the end of the century we would need to would have a reduced energy supply of about 10 terawatt hours. The more moderate models were around 5 terawatt hours, and implying economic output decrease of a similar scale. Even the most digital economies like the USA are coupled 99-1. So there's a lot of hope about decoupling energy consumption, and so for me that inevitability of a very different economic system that we're moving into in the matter of 1 to 2 generations really begs the question of, what do we really value as a civilization? What is important? What is life-sustaining? And for us to not compromise that based on policies of politicians and corporations that are serving self-interest most of the time, and not the well-being of communities, of people, of ecosystems. And so I feel like it's a consensus choice on what we value and how we choose to value it, and how we allow those value systems to influence our decisions and our interactions and our relationships.
Yeah, very well said.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at our probably last question for the day. And this question comes up all the time. In fact, I hear this all the time, which is, how can one maintain organic farming on a large scale to address the mass population of our planet? I'm sure we've got some opinions here in this panel. Who wants to take it?
You got to grow a whole lot of compost and real compost, not the putrefied, stinky, smelly black stuff we get sold. So, yep. Mass population of microbes.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I always get this, well, we have to have fertilizers, we have to have pesticides, all those kind of things, because we wouldn't be able to, you know, the population of the world couldn't be supported without these products. And it's just such a misinformed point of view that's very prevalent. I mean, it is really, you know, there's a lot of folks out there that have that kind of standpoint. And unfortunately, it's just because that's been ingrained, I think, into them, that's what's needed.
Yeah, and no alternative way of growing plants is presented to somebody under those conditions, that you know, you're just in a place where they don't even consider Mother Nature as being capable of releasing enough nutrient to grow a plant. Just you know, we've been misled badly by people who just want to make money.
And the answer that we can for sure not rely upon those agrochemical products to grow enough food to support the world. I don't think we necessarily have a food problem yet in that sense, but we have the ability and the tools and the knowledge now to remove those very ecosystem damaging types of practices and products out of that equation, for sure.
I think that what's happening is we're at a very dangerous point in human history. And one thing that we can do is come together as communities and ensure food security and clean water supplies and help one another. And when we do that, we're then resilient. The community is resilient against anything that happens, whether it's an earthquake or it's a extreme weather event, or it's a climate impacts from drought and so on. Everybody can be cared for. And if we don't do this, then I think it starts to look like the vision that Hollywood has been showing us, more zombies and more, you know, kind of apocalyptic things. And so my experience as a journalist and as an ecological researcher all over the world, I mean, there's some pretty bad stuff going on with wars and extremism and so on. But this is a tiny minority of the people on the earth. The majority of people are wonderful. And so we need to make sure that all the wonderful people are working together to care for each other. And they all have collectively land to take care of. The biggest land holders and caretakers are the indigenous people all over the world. And we just need to kind of study that model and realize that we're all indigenous to the earth. And our duty is to care for the earth systems. So if we do that, then I think the extreme things are more or less, highlighted as minorities and extremes, and the great majority can have a much better time. So that's what we're working for in the ecosystem restoration camps and communities movement.
Thanks, Sean. And I think on that note, I think we're ready to actually go ahead and close our webinar. A few things just before we finish. I just want to talk about the webinar series that we had in July. So just remember that webinars 1, 2, and 3 all have been recorded. And if you missed them or want to rewatch them, by all means, go ahead and get access to that wonderful resource. And I'd like to do some thanks here. This is our last webinar in our July webinar series. I'd like to thank the support staff behind the scenes that actually does a tremendous amount of work to pull these webinars together. Thank you so much to the large team of people that really help make these things to move. And I'd also like to thank our ecosystem restoration camp colleagues and friends for attending the July webinar series. It's been fantastic. I think a lot of great information has been shared, a lot of good discussions. I can see just by the comments in the chat that the inspiration of a lot of folks by attending these webinars is there. So thank you, ERC folks, so much. And I'd like to thank Elaine and the Soulful Web team for imparting their knowledge as well. So
thank you.
All right. I think at this point we can probably go ahead and close, everybody.
Don't forget to click that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell to stay updated with all our new videos.